Welcome back to the Zan and Chube College Football channel here on YouTube. We are doing another College World Series bracket challenge prediction video here on the channel. I've made this an annual tradition. Every year I pick the College World Series bracket and the March Madness bracket. I have a lot of fun doing it. Just love college sports in general in addition to football. So if you're here for baseball, hope you like this video. I don't claim to be a college baseball expert, but I do follow just enough, I feel like, to make a video about this and have a well-informed opinion. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first off, the Winston-Salem region, hosted by the number one overall seed, Wake Forest. They are the best power-rated team by far this year. They're number 7 on base percentage, number 12 in slugging. They have the number 1 ERA in the NCAA with a 2.282 ERA, which is really good. It is far and away the best ERA in college baseball, which is insane. And of course, they have the number 1 strikeout to walk ratio as far as pitching, which is just really good. Wake Forest is an elite team all the way around, especially their pitching, and I have to pick them here to win their regional, despite who else may be in this regional here. As far as the runner-up, it was between Northeastern and Maryland, and I'm going to pick Northeastern. Northeastern, their staff is pretty good in their own right. They're number 2 in ERA behind Wake Forest, believe it or not. So you have the number 1 ERA in NCAA and the number 2 ERA in NCAA right here in this regional. So it's not bad at all. Maryland is a good team with a good lineup, but I got to go with Northeastern here as my runner-up, but Wake Forest moves on. So now to Tuscaloosa. Number 16 overall seed Alabama, they're top 35 in on-base percentage and slugging. They have a top 10 ERA as a staff. Pretty well-balanced team in my opinion, 24-5 in non-conference play, so even though they were kind of log-jammed in the middle of the SEC there, they did very well in out-of-conference. And then also in this regional, you have Boston College and Troy. A lot of people think that Boston College should have been a host of one of these regionals. And then you have Troy here. Troy is a very decent lineup, good bats, and Troy finished at the top of the Sun Belt Conference, was a pretty good mid-major conference in baseball. So I'm going to have Alabama winning this regional. I'm pretty high on Alabama. They're just a really well-rounded team. And then the runner-up, I'm actually going to go with Troy here, give Troy the benefit of the doubt here over Boston College as the runner-up. And then moving here to Coral Gables Regional, hosted by number 8 overall seed Miami. Another well-balanced team, just like Alabama. The one thing about Miami that I'm not really too high on is that they didn't play the best against the better teams. Against Wake Forest, Clemson, Florida, and Virginia combined, those are all top 10 teams. They only went 2-9 versus those teams. So they don't really play well when they're playing some of the other better teams in the country. But the good news for Miami is that there's not another one of those really good teams in their regional. So I'm going to have the Canes moving on. They got really unlucky last year being placed in the same regional as Ole Miss, who ended up going on to win the College World Series as a 3 seed. Miami hosted that regional, lost a couple games by just 1 run. So I think they get their fortunes turned here and move on to the Supers. And as far as the runner-up, I was really close to picking Texas actually to win this regional, but I'm going to say that they end up being the runner-up. But I wouldn't be surprised if Texas ends up pulling this one out. Now to the Stanford regional. Stanford, number 9 overall. Their lineup, top 50 in the country and on base percentage and slugging. They had the best regular season record in the Pac-12, but they did struggle a little bit in non-conference play this year. And then you have Texas A&M. Pretty solid 2 seed. They made a run to the SEC Tournament Championship a few days ago, and they also went on a run to finish in the Final Four in the College World Series last year. So A&M certainly seems to turn it on in the postseason. And then you have Cal State Fullerton, who I'm pretty high on. They tied for 2nd place in the Big West, which is a pretty good baseball conference. They played Stanford head-to-head, actually, Fullerton did, and they lost 2 out of 3 to Stanford, but it was a competitive series. And if you look at Fullerton, they played some other pretty good teams. They beat 2 out of 3 against Texas, and they also played TCU and were competitive. I'm going to go with Cal State Fullerton to win this regional. A little bit of a minor upset here. I was really thinking about Texas A&M. I think Stanford, I'm not really that high on Stanford, to be honest. I'm going to have A&M actually as my runner-up, so it was kind of a coin flip between Fullerton and A&M. I'm just not big on Stanford this year, so I'm going to have Fullerton moving on here. But I know Aggie fans got on my case last year for fading them, so I'm sorry, guys, but I'm going to have to do it again. If A&M makes another deep run into the College World Series, then I'll stop fading Texas A&M. So down here to Baton Rouge, LSU number 5 overall. I'm pretty high on this LSU team. They're top 5 in on-base percentage, slugging percentage, and their staff is top 50 in ERA and strikeouts to walks. They also have 2 really good players who could be top 5 picks in outfielder Dylan Cruz and then right-handed pitcher Paul Skenes. I'm not sure if I said his name right, Skenes or Skenes. But anyways, both those guys could be top 5 picks overall in this year's draft coming up this summer. So LSU is pretty loaded with some top-end talent, and the numbers back that up. There's a reason why they are a top 5 seed overall. But I will say LSU got stuck with Oregon State here, who is a very strong 2 seed in my opinion. Oregon State, consensus top 25 power rated team. They have good pitching as always, a very decent lineup. They did get knocked out 0-2 in the Pac-12 tournament, but I would not count Oregon State out. And then you have Sam Houston here, who I also thought was a very solid 3 seed this year out of the WAC. They beat some pretty good teams this year. All in all, I got to go with LSU. I'm very high on the Tigers this year. I will say Oregon State scares me a little bit. I'm going to have them as the runner-up in this regional. I'll put it this way. I'll be slightly surprised if LSU loses this regional. But if they do lose this regional, I would be shocked if it wasn't to Oregon State. But with that being said, I'm very high on LSU. I think they can easily win this whole thing this year. So I'm going to pick them to win the regional, especially being at home in Baton Rouge. That's got to be a huge home field advantage for them. Down here to Lexington, Kentucky, the number 12 seed. Another well-balanced team here out of the SEC. Kentucky actually played the number 1 strength of schedule this year. They started the season off very well, but then kind of tapered off a little bit towards the second half of the year. And then you also have a couple other interesting teams here, West Virginia and Indiana in this regional. West Virginia kind of not playing their best ball right now going into it. They lost 5 in a row as of now. Another balanced team. And then you have Indiana, who finished as one of the top teams in the Big Ten this year. I'm honestly not really high on many of the teams in this regional. I'm going to have Kentucky moving on and winning this regional. They will be at home. I'm going to have West Virginia as the runner-up here, but I'm not very confident in it. Now here to the Auburn and Clemson regionals. Auburn's coming into this tournament red hot. They've won 9 out of their last 11 games. I'm pretty high on them to win this regional here, so that's who I'm going to pick. But let's not overlook Southern Miss, who I have as the runner-up. Southern Miss, very decent pitching per usual. Seems like they always have good pitching. They're always one of the top teams coming out of Conference USA. Very good baseball program there. However, they did go 0-3 versus the SEC, and I don't see them taking out Auburn here. But if Auburn was to go down, I think it would be to Southern Miss here. And then the Clemson regional. Clemson, the number 4 overall seed. You want to talk about another hot team hosting a regional? That is Clemson. Clemson won the ACC tournament. They have won 16 games in a row, and they've won 23 out of their last 24 if you want to back it out even further. I mean, it's pretty hard to fade Clemson right now, but there's another team in this regional that I really like, and that team is Tennessee. I'm going to have Tennessee winning this regional and knocking out Clemson. Tennessee, they are a 2 seed. They are not a regional host. They're not a national seed. But their lineup is top 30 in on-base percentage, top 10 in slugging percentage, and their pitching staff is pretty good. They're top 5 in ERA and K to BB ratio. I am very high on this Tennessee team. I think they just kind of got clumped down in the gauntlet that is the SEC, and that is why they are not hosting a regional here. But they are power rated as a top 10 team, and I think Tennessee has the talents, has the numbers to make a deep run into this tournament. And I'm going to pick them to upset the red-hot Clemson Tigers, who I'm going to have finishing as the runner-up here. So that's one of my first, I guess, bolder predictions here in terms of a top seed going down in the regional. So I have yet another SEC Supers right here, Auburn versus Tennessee. Looks like I'm going SEC homer right now, but I promise it's not going to finish that way as we keep going on here. So let's move over to the other half, Gainesville. Number 2 overall seed, Florida Gators. They tied Arkansas for the best record in the SEC during the regular season, which is a pretty impressive feat in my opinion. And their outfielder, Wyatt Langford, he's projected to be a top 5 overall pick in the draft. Jack Caglione as well, one of my favorite players, a two-way player like Ohtani, very fun to watch. Florida, I'm going to have them winning this regional. I think just overall better team, more talent. Between Texas Tech and UConn, I'm going to go with Texas Tech. Texas Tech got a pretty good lineup. They finished middle of the pack in the Big 12, but I'm going to go with them here to finish as the runner-up. But I'd be pretty surprised if Florida does not win this regional. And then Columbia here. South Carolina, well-balanced team, number 15 overall seed, but they are not playing so well as of late. They've lost 11 out of their last 14 games. So the Gamecocks not doing well as of late. And they got a pretty tough regional draw in my opinion. I think they have a very strong 2 and 3 seed here in NC State and Campbell. Campbell was number 1 in the NCAA in on-base percentage this year, and they were number 2 in slugging percentage. So Campbell, they are OPS freaks, one of the best lineups in the country in terms of OPS, which is the stats that I really like to look for here when picking these teams. They dominated the Big South Conference, and they are power rated as the number 16 overall team. So this Campbell team is legit. They are not a pushover by any means. And then you have NC State, who I'm also fairly high on. They are a top 25 power rated team, even though they're a 3 seed. Solid pitching as well. ACC, of course, is a very good conference. I'm going to go with NC State. I was very close between picking Campbell and NC State, but I'm going to give the edge to the Wolfpack, and I'm going to have Campbell as my runner-up. So I'm really fading South Carolina hard here. Sorry, Gamecocks fans, but I think Carolina just got a really bad draw here with NC State and Campbell. These are a very strong 2 and 3 seed right here. So that sets up Florida and NC State here. The Conway Regional, Coastal Carolina, number 10 overall seed. Good offense. This is a program that has won it all before, not that long ago in this tournament. They had the best Sun Belt regular season record, which is pretty respectable. The Sun Belt's a very good baseball conference. And then you have the other team that I'm pretty high on in this regional, and that is Duke. Duke out of the ACC. They contrast well to Coastal. They have very good pitching, and they are actually power rated ahead of Coastal. And Duke's played pretty well against the big boys. If you go back and look at their schedule, they're 6 and 7 combined against Wake Forest, Clemson, Virginia, and Miami. Those are all top 10 teams, and Duke's playing 500 ball against the best of the best. That's pretty good. I'm going to say Duke goes into Conway and they take out the Chanticleers. So Duke moves on to the Supers, and I'm going to have Coastal as the runner-up. The Charlottesville Regional, UVA, number 7 overall. Pretty good team on paper in my opinion. A lot of the stats I really like. They're top 10 in on-base percentage, top 10 in slugging. Their pitching staff, top 10 in ERA, and top 10 in strikeouts to walks ratio. On paper, this Virginia team is very good. The one drawback I would say to the Cavs is that they did play a weaker strength of schedule for whatever reason. They did play some of the weaker teams in the ACC, so those numbers perhaps maybe a little bit more inflated compared to a lot of these other teams coming out of that conference. And some interesting teams here in this regional. You have Army, who's not a bad 4 seed in my opinion. Oklahoma, who I'm kind of surprised made the tournament, to be honest, but they did get in. They made the College World Series finals last year. They had an incredible run and lost to Ole Miss in the finals. And then you have East Carolina, who year in and year out is always at least hosting regionals or making it to supers. So it's kind of a tougher regional on paper at least. But with that being said, I'm going to give the edge to UVA. I'm going to stick to the numbers here, and I'm going to have UVA moving on. But I'm not very confident in this one. I'm going to have ECU as the runner-up, but I would not be surprised at all if East Carolina takes out the Cavaliers here in Charlottesville. These two actually matched up last year in the same regional, and ECU got the best of them. So we'll see how it goes this time around. Nashville and Stillwater. The Nashville Regionals, Vanderbilt number 6 overall. They won the SEC tournament, and they also have very decent pitching, as they seem to always do year in and year out. Pretty high on this Vanderbilt squad, as always, in the postseason. And I'd say they got a fairly weaker regional in my opinion. So I'm going to go with Vanderbilt here. I think they got a good draw. Oregon is the 2 seed with Xavier as the 3. These two actually played each other first series of the year. Oregon swept Xavier 4-0 in a 4-game series. So I'm going to give the Ducks the benefit of the doubt here as the runner-up, but I'd be very surprised if Vandy does not win this regional. And then the Stillwater regional. This one is kind of tough in my opinion. Top to bottom, I think Oral Roberts is actually the highest rated 4 seed in this entire tournament. Oral Roberts is power rated as a number 45 overall team. In fact, I think you could make an argument that Oral Roberts is better than Washington, who's the 3 seed here. And then you have Dallas Baptist as the 2. Dallas Baptist power rated as a top 15 team, and they are not a national seed, so Oklahoma State has their hands full here. All these teams here are pretty familiar with one another. Oklahoma State, they've played Oral Roberts this year. They are 0-2 versus Oral Roberts. So ORU is 2-0 against the regional host this year. And Oklahoma State also has played Dallas Baptist, and they split 1-1. So a lot of familiarity here between these teams. Oh, this is tough to do. Oklahoma State's got a good offense. They are the host here, but I think this is just kind of playing the numbers. I'm going to go with Dallas Baptist to win this regional and take out the Cowboys in Stillwater. Dallas Baptist, they have solid pitching. They usually play a lot of Big 12 teams, and they're pretty competitive. 3-5 versus the Big 12 this year, all those competitive games. So a lot of familiarity in this regional. I'm going to go with Dallas Baptist, and I'm going to say Oklahoma State is the runner-up, but I would not be surprised based on what we've seen so far from Oral Roberts. Would not be surprised if they are that 4 seed that actually makes a surprise run, or at least challenges to win the regional. So the final 2 regionals here before we move on to Supers. Terre Haute, is that how you say it? I don't even know how you say it. That's the town that Indiana State is in. Indiana State, the Sycamores, number 14 overall. They were the best team in the Missouri Valley Conference, and they got to being a regional host with very good pitching on the year, very good record. And then you have Iowa, who is top 15 in on base percentage and ERA. So that's a pretty good sign from Iowa coming out of the Big Ten as far as the stats that I'm looking at. And then UNC, who is middle of the pack in the ACC, but they are power rated as a pretty good team. They're power rated pretty similarly to Indiana State. So I hate to do this, but I'm going to have UNC winning this regional. Again, this is more of a numbers play here. UNC about power rated the same as Indiana State. I would love to see some betting odds on this regional. I think it'd be pretty close. I would like to see Indiana State personally make a run. I like to see, these mid-major schools that have good seasons and get to host a regional, which doesn't happen very often. I'd like to see them make a run here, but I'm going to pick UNC here. I'm going to have the Sycamores as the runner-up. And then lastly, we have the Fayetteville Regional. So Arkansas, as I mentioned earlier, they tied with Florida for the best record in the SEC regular season. They played the number 3 overall strength of schedule this year. They started the season 20-2, so they got off to a hot start. They are the number 3 overall seed. I am not going to pick them to win this regional. Sorry, Arkansas fans. I am going to pick TCU to win this regional with the Hogs as the runner-up here. TCU is 12-1 in their last 13 games, so they're playing very well. They won the Big 12 tournament championship. I just think this is a case of a team getting hot at the right time here, and I figured that there's probably got to be at least one Big 12 team that makes the Supers this year. I did not have one yet. So I have a little bit of upsets here in this side of the bracket here. Not all of the regional hosts making it to Supers in this one. And I just think in general this regional is kind of tough. It's one of the tougher ones from top to bottom. You have Arizona, who might be the worst team in this regional. I think Santa Clara is a very strong 4 seed out of the West Coast Conference. So top to bottom, this one is pretty competitive compared to some other ones. So again, I'm going to pick TCU here as the hot team at the right time. So, who's going to the College World Series? Wake Forest and Alabama. I'll tell you what, Alabama I think is a very strong 16 seed. I like them a lot, but it is very hard to go against Wake Forest. I'm going to say Wake moves on and goes to the College World Series, but I would not be surprised at all if Alabama was the team that was to derail Wake Forest's run at a College World Series appearance. So I think Wake takes 2 out of 3 to beat Bama to go to Omaha. Down here, Miami and Cal State Fullerton. You know, I was very close to picking Fullerton to move on here, but I'm going to have Miami. I think Miami, I'm not necessarily super high on them, but I think they got a fairly good draw here with some of the other teams that are in their path to get to Omaha. And I think Miami gets there in a competitive series against Fullerton. Now we have LSU and Kentucky. I am all LSU here. I like LSU a lot. Not necessarily the highest on Kentucky. I'd be pretty surprised if LSU or Oregon State, I think those are the 2 best teams in this region, in either of these 2 regionals, to be honest. So I'm going to have LSU moving on. Auburn and Tennessee, another SEC matchup here. Tennessee, I am all over Tennessee here. I think the Vols, they had that super team last year that did not even make it to the College World Series. That was very surprising. It just goes to show it's not necessarily about being the best team. It's about being the hot team at the right time. And you know, there's something about the way sports work to where there's teams like this, like Tennessee last year, who had a super team that gets bounced early in the tournament. It's a huge surprise, and then you have a team that comes in next year kind of under the radar, not nearly as good as the super team the year before, and that team that's not necessarily as talented ends up making a deeper run. I don't know why, it just seems to happen a lot, especially recently. I've noticed when it comes to college athletics. So I'm going to say that this is Tennessee this year. I think Tennessee makes a run to the College World Series with a much less talented team than what they had last year, which is, you know, that just works out that way sometimes. So first bracket is complete. The next bracket, Florida and NC State. I like Florida a lot here. So the Gators move on. Duke and Virginia, and all ACC. Super regional. Give me Duke. Duke is another unranked team I have making the College World Series. I'm very high on the Blue Devils pitching, and I think they're one of those teams that makes a little bit of a quiet run here to Omaha, and they take out Virginia. Now Vanderbilt and Dallas Baptist. Give me Vandy. It's pretty hard to pick Dallas Baptist to go deep in these tournaments. I seem to always pick Dallas Baptist, I feel like, but I'm going to not have them go into Omaha this year. I think Vanderbilt gets them. Vanderbilt's a very solid team, per usual. And then UNC and TCU. This is the only super regional, I believe, that would not have a nationally ranked seed here. And TCU would be hosting. And I like TCU here. I think TCU, again, playing well at the right time. I have the Horned Frogs moving on to Omaha. So this is my College World Series. I have number 1 Wake, number 8 Miami, number 5 LSU, unranked Tennessee, number 2 Florida, unranked Duke, number 6 Vanderbilt, and unranked TCU. So a bunch of 1s and then 3 2 seeds in here this year. So hopefully this year I get at least half of these teams correct. I'd say that's pretty good overall. So let's find out who I have going to the finals. I am going to have LSU. Yes, I was very close to picking Wake Forest. I was actually thinking about picking Tennessee potentially. I would not be surprised if that happens, I'm telling you right now. But I'm going to have LSU. I'm just very high on this Tigers team this year. A lot of top-end talent. And I have them taking out Wake Forest in a very competitive series that gets them to the finals. I'm going to have Tennessee finishing in 3rd with Miami getting bounced 0-2 out of the College World Series. And then in this next bracket, this one I feel like was even tougher because I really was considering all of these teams as a possibility to make it to the finals. There wasn't necessarily one team that I was just very certain, oh yeah, they're going to get knocked out quickly. I'm going to pick Vanderbilt to win this bracket. Not necessarily the most confident in this, but that's just kind of who I feel like is going to win. It's very random sometimes. Some years there's always these teams that as long as you can just get there, anything can happen. And then the runner-up I am going to have as TCU. So the Horned Frogs Cinderella run comes to an end here in the Final Four. I'm going to have Florida finishing as the 3rd team here, and then I'm going to have Duke as the 4th. So my finals are set. LSU versus Vanderbilt, another all-SEC College World Series finals. Seems to be the trend in recent years. I would not be surprised if it happens again. So LSU versus Vanderbilt. I'm going to have LSU winning the College World Series. I think LSU is due. They're a program that usually year in and year out is very good. They have the top end MLB draft talent this year. Statistically, one of the best all the way around. They played in the best conference overall. They did not necessarily win the SEC, but they are more than capable of making a run and winning it all. Again, in baseball, it's not about being the best team. It's about being the hottest team at the right time when it comes to this. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment. Let me know who your favorite team is, who you think's going to win, who you think's going to make the College World Series. Let me know down below in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching and have a great day.